Hey everybody, lead programmer Cameron Macgowan back at you with writer-director of Pvt Chat, Ben Hozie. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. If I'm not mistaken, you're recording an album right now for your band. Is it Bodega, perhaps?
That's it. That's us. Yeah, we're mixing right now, really. But yeah, in the studio right now. You can see here's the this. Well, it's not really the best view, but here we are. It's Trout Studios in South Brooklyn.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join us, man.
Yeah,
And
thank you
hopefully
guys
Peter,
for taking the time to have me.
yeah, hopefully actor Peter Vack joins us at some point. I did message him, but whatever. I mean, Peter is who he is. And so I first want to start, Ben, on the note of your indie music background. What skills acquired through independent music do you think help you become a better filmmaker and that you may have used when approaching this project?
That's a good question. There's a tendency when you're in a band that bands are different because when you make a movie, you have a crew and they become your best friends for about 5 to 6 weeks or something like that, and then they fuck off, and a lot of those people you'll never see again. Whereas a band, you're stuck with them for a very long time. You spend almost every night together when you're touring and things like that. So you become like a family. But one of the things I like being in a band is everybody picks up the slack for everybody else. Whereas on a movie set, people have a tendency to be like, "Oh, I'm the gaffer. I only deal with the lights. Oh, I'm the makeup person. I only deal with the makeup." But on a low budget set like Pvt Chat, everybody pitches in. So, like for example, when the walls get painted teal, and I show up that morning with a bucket of paint, and me and Kit, the production designer, have a bucket of paint. We say, "Everybody grab a brush. The quicker we paint this wall, the quicker we can start filming today." Everybody grabs a brush, and that has much more of a DIY band energy than your typical Hollywood movie set.
Fantastic. So how much of Peter's background in making that type of film himself were you aware of before casting him in this role? What's up? That's my cat, Ernest.
Hey, Ernest. Well, quite aware actually, because I met Peter on the set of Oliver, who's the producer of Pvt Chat. He directed a movie, Oliver, in like 2014 called Lucy Now Dreams Herself, and Peter's the lead in that. It's kind of an experimental short that probably not too many people have seen, and I was the assistant director on. So I knew Peter from that, and I started to, after I met him, I started to watch a lot of his movies, and I knew about his own movie Assholes. What's kind of funny is when I first met Peter, we didn't really get along. I think he thought I was kind of like a snob, and I thought he was like an actor prima donna. We didn't have a good first impression of each other.
Oh, here he is.
Oh, there he is. Yeah. Peter,
Welcome.
I was just talking about how you and me now we're great, wonderful friends, but when we first met, we didn't get along at all.
Yeah, I've used that anecdote too a few times recently. Yeah. We really didn't. I think it was a very mutual distaste for sure, but we love each other now, so it's fine to say.
Yeah, you can't judge a book by its cover.
No. You really can't.
And my cat is losing his shit now that Peter Vack has joined the chat. Everybody, welcome, actor Peter Vack, Cuff alum. Like Thanks, he's losing. How you been, man?
I'm well. I'm good. How have you been?
Good. I've had a kid since we last hung out.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations.
A year and a half
awesome.
Old. Very cute.
Wow, that's so great.
And Betsy just submitted actors, so we're gonna watch that right away, man. Very stoked.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's a great. I think it's cool. Yeah, cool. Nice.
Anyway, let's get on to Pvt Chat. So Ben was talking about some indie music techniques that may help him making independent films, and you kind of implement that family style in your work. So I was just talking about that initial collaboration, how much Ben knew of the making of Assholes, perhaps, before approaching you for Pvt Chat.
I'm not sure if Ben knew a lot about the making of it, but I think am I wrong in saying that watching the film maybe was part of what convinced you that I had it in me to do the movie just as an actor? Yeah, I came off. Yeah, you can take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, the big impression I had of Peter before seeing Assholes is that he's really serious, kind of like how you are right now. I don't mean this in any of like a diss, but you're like your energy often is chilled back. Like you couldn't care less to be in the situation that you're in. I don't mean this in a bad way, but that's kind of like your de facto mode often, right? And in a lot of the roles, I feel like you've been kind of typecast as either like a total douchebag or kind of like a heartthrob type, right? That's like your parameters you've been cast in. But in your own movie, Assholes, in the first scene that Peter's in, he's like bouncing off the walls and he has a bong in his hand and he's just very giddy and he's jumping up on furniture and he's like, "You're never gonna fucking believe it, man," you know. And he has this, and I saw for the first time in Peter in his acting a sort of naive, boyish quality that charmed me so much.
Yeah, man.
For how uninhibited and goofy it kind of was, I was like, "Oh wow, I gotta make Peter the main character."
Well, it's weird because I met Peter before seeing him in all those parts that you mentioned, and I know him as like a goof. Well, from the 3 days we spent together, as more like the character in Private Chat. So
I was
kind of
definitely in a
refreshing.
good mood. I was definitely in a good mood the whole time I was at Cuff in 2017.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I am moody.
I'm not even saying you're moody.
Yeah.
I'm saying often the characters you play are moody.
Yeah, no, totally. But you know, you're not wrong in saying that my default position, perhaps socially, is to be a little bit more reserved. You know, not always, because like I do think that I probably was thrilled when we were hanging out and allowing myself to be more, you know, I think it's almost maybe more the more at ease I am or something.
Okay.
And it's sort of like a defensive posture, I guess. But yeah, well, and I've said this a few times in talking about the movie recently, but like part of I think one of the things that saves the character from being fully irredeemable was Ben's insistence that I do bring that boyish, naive, sort of hopeless romantic quality to certain moments. There was a few times where I think I even resisted the direction, but it was never wrong. I mean, it was never the wrong direction. And in fact, when I watch it, it is those moments that I think I like the best. And I think they're the ones that are most revealing to the true nature of who Jack is. And it's not when he sort of pontificates about his nihilistic worldview. It's more like when he's bouncing around and emptying the cabinets and, you know, and just acting like a kid. I mean, I think that to me, I think most of the other things he does and says are sort of armor to defend against his sensitivity and his like actual exuberance that he's not able to, doesn't really know where the outlet is, but he is not really sort of the uptight or dark nihilistic guy.
Right. Well, that's what I really love about the movie is that it could have so easily been like a throwback to the 70s New York films where it's like a grifter who keeps fucking up and what have you. And the stakes get high, but that doesn't really happen in this one. This one almost goes like a more John Cassavetes direction. It almost gets like Minnie and Moskowitz. Is that what that film's called? Minnie Moskowitz or Punch Drunk Love or something. It becomes kind of like this adorable love story to me. A little bit. And so I just want to talk about what some of your references were for the tone of this film, Ben.
There were a couple that shifted a lot. A big emotional center point for me was Paul Schrader's films. I mean, probably most people would think of Taxi Driver, but I was thinking of so many of his films. Just this idea of like you putting this kind of cinema where you make a movie based on a first person kind of character. But also, I was also thinking of Terrence Malick's last 3 or 4 movies, especially the one that I adore, To the Wonder. I wanted to make it kind of a graceful spiritual movie, which might seem counterintuitive because of the subject matter, but you know, the visual style is inspired by that, and also this sense of the romantic kind of tone. Fallen Angels by Wong Kar-wai, that was a big one.
Cool.
You know,
and Peter, you give like almost a full-blown Brando performance in this one, man. I had to message you right away when I saw it. Like, you fucking commit, dude. So I mean, I guess I should frame this as an overall question first. I'll start with a statement like an audience member might, though. The current world of cinema is so sexless. It's so sexless, and your film honestly leans into modern sexuality and fully embraces it almost in a non-judgmental way. And it's beautiful to see. I just want to know how deliberate that was from the get-go, Ben, and how you worked with your actors on some of the more revealing moments, I mean, emotionally and physically.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we decided we're going to make a movie about a guy who's obsessed with a cam girl, it became sort of like, okay, we're making a movie about masturbation. And I've never seen a movie about masturbation, particularly male masturbation, that deals with it in an honest way. So it became like, whoever plays Jack has to be comfortable actually masturbating on screen. And luckily I met Peter, who was willing to do that as long as it, served the film and wasn't tasteless to a certain degree. Although I think if I said it was completely tasteless, Peter might have trusted me because he's very trusting of directors who he likes, I think, to me, masturbation in films is either one or two things. It's either played for a laugh, like, oh, like I'm thinking of like American Pie or something. Like I stuck my genitals in a pie, and isn't that funny? Or it's played for disgustingness, where it's like I'm such a psychopath that I'm masturbating, and oh, he's clearly the bad guy in this movie, right? So I wanted to show a movie that isn't either of those things. Actually, I think there's a third category, which I'll add for masturbation scene, which is like a glossy eroticism. One of my big influences of this movie was Gaspar Noé's Love, which I loved when I first saw it because of how what I think that movie had, which was a killer combination, is a sentimental eroticism, which floored me as a viewer. I was like, wow, I've never seen a movie where sex is not really played for titillation, but is played for romance. But I would, being a sort of a critic now, I would say Gaspar Noé still is playing for titillation. Like all the shots in that movie are very airbrushed. It feels like a Playboy shoot or something like that. Everyone's beautiful. The camera's at just the right distance, and it's not very realistic. At least not the type of sexual experiences I've ever had. So I wanted to take that sentimental eroticism from Love, but bring it more down to earth to something for the, the average Joes that aren't, hanging out at the Playboy Mansion or whatever. And to me, that involved making sex very, very realistic and very, very honest, and not necessarily played for titillation though. Like I think one great quality that Peter has as an actor is he loses whatever vanity he has in real life as soon as we're rolling action, almost to a degree that is exhilarating.
I can see it. So what was that first conversation like, Peter? You knew the full expectations, or were you game to double down? What was that first conversation like between you gents about how far you were willing to go in this film?
I almost don't really even remember it, but I just don't. I don't. Do you remember that, Ben? I don't remember it. It more. It's funny because how do I say this? It's like there's this common like refrain that actors have where they're like, well, I wouldn't do that. I only will do that. I'll only reveal that if it's something I really know is going to be great and good. And the funny thing is I loved the script, and I trusted Ben as like a person, but you never know what's going to be great and good. But part of how you partially ensure that something is worthwhile is by not backing off from anything in the material if you are signing up to do it. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure I needed to be convinced, because I wouldn't have said yes to this movie if I wasn't willing to do what it required, which was so clearly a lot of jerking off.
Well, bless you. Because
but
like,
does that point resonate?
Right now,
because you a lot of people I think that like think that Yeah, I'm not sure. It's also just like I think I've said this a bunch of times, but I crave sort of seeing a complete lack of I read something recently that was talking about like art that is being like an unobserved, the art that works being like an unobserved act. And they really weren't even talking about movies. They maybe were talking about fine art, but it seemed so applicable to movies because I think we all know as viewers when we're watching a movie or a TV show, and even if it's very skillfully done or technically well executed, you can see that the actors almost like had their eyes on the action from the outside. And part of my goal is to never feel that way. And part of doing that is exposing yourself.
Well, and that's where I really did see
Yeah.
Cassavetes' influence, man, is because it is volatile. Like it creates a realism, because especially the way Ben shoots it, where you really get to know this character. And even if he's a bit of a weasel, it's like you see this man fully exposed emotionally and physically, and it really helps add another layer to the film. So thanks to you guys for going there, man, because not a lot of movies are willing to do it these days, and they should. Because it's the modern age, man. It's like it's the pro sex worker age. It's like Hollywood needs to grow up a bit, and acknowledge that people are fucking.
Yeah, and actually, just to piggyback off that, to do a film about the internet and to not have it be explicit would seem so wrong. I mean, the internet is. I mean, even if there's like a sense of like prudishness and propriety in the air, it's like 2 clicks in any direction, and it's like it's all there. So we're living in it's a little bit like
we live in such a prudish world, though. Like so many distributors, when I was early on pitching this movie, would say, "Now, Ben, we understand female nudity. That's art." They were like Jack Palance in Godard's Contempt or something like that. They were like, now female nudity, that's art, okay? Like that's Metropolitan Museum of Art. But a penis? Come on, we're trying to sell tickets here, my guy. It's like we have such a ways to go. And in terms of, I mean, there's a reason why we have incels in this country more comfortable with guns than their own sexuality. It's a problem,
It's absolutely a problem, and people aren't willing to talk about it. And hopefully after your film they were. So thanks for sticking your guns with the distributors. I know those conversations can be super annoying. So let's talk a bit about the internet and its involvement in the film. Ben, during the writing process, how deep did you get into the world of webcam models and online gambling? And in turn, Peter, did you do much research on either of those avenues?
When I first started writing, I had only been on cam sites here and there, but I decided to do a little bit of research. So I got on, and I decided to do kind of a thing where I would get in chats with certain models, and I would say, "Hey, I'm going to pay you $25 if you'll answer these questions." And some didn't want to do that, some did. Honestly, almost nothing I got from that was that useful for my script. I ended up mostly using research that from sex worker friends in New York, more kind of like massage girl type things maybe than cam girls, and applied that to this movie. But in terms of internet gambling, I didn't know anything about internet gambling. I knew about real gambling at a casino or something, but it wasn't until maybe like 2 months before the shoot that I decided, maybe I'll make a night and try internet gambling. So I did a night of internet gambling, and I completely got hooked. And I was like, all right, this is my thing, just like Jack, which is hilarious. So much to the point that it became my stress release valve when we were filming. There was one particularly pathetic night when we were shooting that after shooting for like 12, 13 hours and I DP'd the movie too, so I had the camera on my shoulder. I thought, I'll play a little bit of internet craps to blow off some steam. And I ended up, you start out with $5 and you're like, oh, I'm going to play $5 in the passing lane or whatever. And then you lose that. You're like, well, I got to put in $10 and I'll win that back. You lose that. You go, okay, well, surely $25 and then I'll win that back and I'll stop. But you lose that. And you're like, all right, okay, I got this, $100. And before you knew it, people are knocking on my door because we shot most of the movie in my apartment, and they've arrived at 8 a.m. the next day, and they're like, all right, what's the first setup? And I'm still playing craps like a complete loser. And it was that moment where I kind of realized how addicting and how much they get you. But it helped me because I think that was one of the days where Jack had to gamble and lose a lot of his money. And I felt, okay, I can honestly direct the scene because I too am a pathetic gambling loser.
Be me today, Peter.
Yeah.
I was like certain that Ben was like a gambling addict, and it was part of why he was making the movie. I thought this was just like his way of kind of exercising this addiction of his.
Well, indie filmmaking is a gamble. You're like, okay, here's
huge.
not only every cent in my checking account, but here's credit cards maxed out. And we're going to make this movie that might play at like 2 film festivals. It's like, you have to be a crazy masochist to make cinema. And I love anyone who does it.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, Ben's answer is it. I'd seen Cam Girls, obviously. I didn't really feel like I needed to spend so much time there because that relationship, I don't know. It's almost like if I had tried to recreate that relationship in life, it would have like distracted from having it for the first time in the film. And then Ben really, he really walked me through the gambling stuff because I'm like bad with numbers and I would never like get into that normally. So he did his best to teach me, and I think you did, Ben. Actually, there was a couple moments where I really believed that I was really good and knew what I was doing, and that I was all thanks to the research.
You should tell about the time we won $4,000 at the Aqueduct.
Right, our most classic story is we went to this casino near JFK, the airport in New York, and we were there to shoot some stuff that ultimately didn't even make it into the film because I think it really wasn't right for the character or the world. But right before we left, we had some idea that we would put like actually kind of a lot of money on one roulette number. So first Ben was like,
while filming.
First Ben was like, this is how you do it. And we put in like $1. Okay, lost. And then I was like, I'm going to put in 60, I think, and you put in 60. So we had 120 on red 21, which just seemed hot, you know? And we hit it. We hit red 21. The payout was like $3,700 cash. I had to sign a W-9 to get the money.
Did you get an associate producer credit for this, Peter?
I don't want it. I don't want it. I should.
No.
No. We just kept the money. I mean, Ben and I just.
There was a bunch of like serious gamblers around us when we won, and they kind of like all looked us in the eye and they said, "We just want to let you know it will never get any sweeter than this. You need to leave right now."
Yeah. True, and that's probably true. Yeah, but that was incredible.
Last one before I queue up the Q&A questions, if we have any. What do you all hope that this film creates a ripple effect of in indie cinema or in inspiring future work?
I mean, I'll just say from my perspective, I hope it creates a more candid kind of cinema. Like I was talking to a journalist like 2 days ago, and they asked they were asking some pretty tough questions, and they said, "So, do you think this film subverts the male gaze?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I've been brainwashed. I grew up in South Carolina, and I've been culturally conditioned to think as a certain kind of male, right? And the kind of cinema I'm inheriting, whether it's Godard or Hitchcock or Brian De Palma or any of these people, it's male, right? So I'm filming from a male gaze, but I'm very self-aware. You know, I've studied film history. I've thought a lot about this, and I'm trying to film from my male gaze in a more interesting, complex way than maybe some of my predecessors have. But I can never not see from my male gaze. And if I'm of any value to the cinema world, it's because I can be honest as a filmmaker in my own the way I understand the pervert in characters like Jack and even characters like Scarlett. And so what I hope for in the next 100 years of cinema is that other types of people are going to make perverted movies from their own honest perspectives. that's what I'm looking forward to. And I would just like to inspire that kind of boldness in all other kinds of people, and other people, just, you know, anybody pick up a camera and just tell the truth. That's what I want to see as a filmmaker. You know, there's so much falseness in the art world.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah,
as long as
I
you have
can't do
bold
better
actors
than
like Peter around
Yeah.
telling these stories.
I mean, it's tough. I'll be honest. Like when you make a movie like Pvt Chat, you're playing with fire, right? Because when when a character walks across the street and you film them walking across the street in cinema, they actually have to walk across the street. Unlike in a novel, you can write somebody walking across the street and you hallucinate them walking across the street. In a movie, you actually have to film somebody walking across the street. So if you write a movie with people doing things, they actually have to do those things. That's why cinema is amazing, and it's one of the most explosive, exhilarating art mediums. But it's also why it's potentially dangerous. This is why things like showmances happen, where two actors have to kiss in a scene. They might accidentally have this week-long affair or something. Peter can talk about this as an actor. You're playing with fire. So I know making a movie like Pvt Chat, you do have responsibility.
Absolutely.
To do it right, and to make sure everybody feels comfortable, and to the audience to say, I didn't go to this extreme for any kind of bullshit reason. I went here because I really believed in it with all my being, you know?
Anything you want to add to that, Peter, before we open it
I
up?
really don't know if I could add to it. I think I second it strongly. Yeah, I mean that. No, I really can't. I hope for the same things, and I agree with them for sure.
All right, crowd. Chat if you have any questions in there. I have no idea who's watching, if anybody. This will be recorded and put up on YouTube, so shout out to people watching it later.